Hey everybody, before we get started, this episode brought to you by our patrons like I Got Comics, Blacklist OG, Qua, Jeremy Vasquez, Carly Denton, Nestor Flores, Rogue Robin, Yanni P, Soda 042 and Video Gamer 75. And if you like what we do, want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early and lots of other goodies, and we help us out. Thanks for your support, everybody. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's time once again for Enter the Dojo. Everybody's quarantined, we're all inside. Now I can finally make that video. I'm joshing you. I was planning on making this video for a while. I've just been very busy week last week. So we're gonna continue working on stuff and do this. So this is Bayushi Deathdealer, in case you can't tell from the intro slide. Sorry. Third is a little scratchy today, but not in that way. I know. I feel like as a person who is actually, heck, if you watch some of our videos, you know this. As a person who's constantly suffering from like a 5 to 10% inability to breathe, I feel like all this, COVID panic is going to be like, everybody's going to think I'm fucking sick if they listen to anything I make in the next couple of weeks. No. I just probably really need to vacuum. It's been a week or two since I did that. Get some dust out and just, shake clear the pipes. Anyway, I'm drinking a lot of water right now to try and help with that, but it might not work. But I am fairly promptly getting started on this, so I've only been up a little while. Anyway, it's Bayushi Deathdealer because I've, unless I'm grossly mistaken, Unicorn or Scorpion are next in the rotation. So hey, guess what? Next episode, whenever that happens, will probably be Shinjo. But normally I don't jump out of core book schools, but here's the thing. And maybe not in the last weekish or so, but for a while there, in my solid planning phase, there were multiple people shit-talking the Bayushi Deathdealer, and in case this is your first Enter the Dojo, or it's been so long you don't remember why we started making Enter the Dojo, that is 110% why I started making this, because the first one was Cada, because people were shit-talking Cada, and I was like, y'all are wrong. Similarly, the next one was, hey, is Miyamoto Niten really that good? Kinda. Though, interestingly, I've heard some of the same people who complained about Deathdealer also complained that Niten wasn't as cool as other people made it sound because it entirely relied on external pressure. But I don't know. That's something I think you can count on. If you're making a Bushi build, you can count that somebody's going to try and hit you at some point, right? That's kind of how that works. But yeah, so we're going to talk about Bayushi Deathdealer, the infamous Bayushi Bushi, because I've heard people, like I said, shit-talking this school, and I'm like, that's not going to work. I think this school's pretty cool and thematic. And not awful. I think the only really thing maybe we want to talk about in the intro bit is to bring up the quote-unquote controversy of Bayushi Bushi, which is Scorpion didn't get a Bushi school in core book because they have 5 families, and they gave Bayushi's courtier school manipulator, one of the key ones. They gave the Shisora Infiltrator, though when I did an episode on that, and that might have even been before Quartz. I think that was actually before Quartz of Stone actually came out. But I made sure to mention that if you wanted to play a stealth Bushi, like be a infiltrator pretending to be a Bushi, that was a perfectly valid school because you were hella combat oriented. But there's Bayushi Soshiro. Are there only 4 Scorpion families? There might be 4. I think I did that. I might have done that my math wrong. Sorry, I'm bad at math. But the other 2 were Shugenja schools. Is it 2? Yeah, maybe. Sorry, I'm thinking. I believe it's only Unicorn and Crab have 5. The problem is that Scorpion are doubled up on Shugenja schools, and will continue to be. A lot of people are like, "Oh, Phoenix book's coming out. Who's it gonna be for Scorpion? What are they gonna do? Are we gonna get other?" No, dude, it's gonna be Soshi, and they're gonna do shadow magic because y'all don't read. But I swear, every time they bring up void magic, they're like, "Oh, and the spooky Soshi are also like the Ishiken of the Phoenix." So like, it's there's no way that they're gonna go to all the trouble to make a whole new technique type, and then they're gonna be like, "Okay, there's a title, and there's one school for Phoenix." No, they're gonna find a way to make it apply to Soshi also. Anyway, so that caused a lot of people consternation. Some people were dumb enough to claim on the internet, or at least theorize, "Does this mean Scorpion don't have Bushi?" First of all, no. Second of all, double no. That's not even how that works. Because there's a strong implication. One, just because a school isn't printed yet doesn't mean it doesn't exist, i.e., the books explicitly call out that there's a Toritaka Falcon Bushi school, and there's several more Crane schools mentioned in the Crane book that aren't actually printed yet, but because they use capital letters, we can assume that they exist officially. But two, also, no, just because even if there was no famous Bushi dojo for the Scorpion or whoever, there still are trained as Bushi, and there are still plenty of applicable schools that could represent minor dojos and outlets. Worldly Ronin was a decent fill-in, if you wanted to build that build. Anyway, so that was a big concern, and this made some people were like, it led to some very interesting things, because a lot of people were like, well, why don't we balance the roles like this is D&D and like everybody needs a fighter or something, which I don't think is necessarily true. And in fact, at certain points in your history, I feel like some writers of L5R might have reacted quite volatilely to your suggestion that this should be some kind of, party-balanced shenanigans a la D&D. I don't know, I think they were just trying to encapsulate the Scorpion story more. And especially early on, a lot of the Scorpion and Bayushi characters we were seeing were, like, super distant, schemy types. And as we'll see as we go through, Bayushi Bushi is a school, Bayushi Deathdealer, that benefits from being in a later supplement. Because, unfortunately, hey, guess what? If they printed Bayushi Deathdealer in the core book, it would have just been Shosuro with maybe some Aiajutsu. It's, like, not gonna be a big deal. Anyway, we've done the intro way too long. This episode, being an episode of Enter the Dojo, will already be 50 million years long. So let's just move on to the school. Alright, so that thar Bayushi Deathdealer school, Bushi and Shinobi, because of course they're Scorpion, they have to be shifty. Rings are air and fire, pretty typical. I think those were also the Shosuro rings, and might be the core Bayushi Manipulator school rings. If you're a Scorpion, air and fire, baby, all the way. So you get 5 skills, pretty typical with the Bushi school. You get Command, Courtesy, Fitness, Martial Arts Melee, Martial Arts Range, Sentiment, Skullduggery, and Tactics options. Because you get one of 2 special weapons. I'll spoil the starting outfit. You get your Daishu, you get your armor, traveling clothes, pack, and you can take a folding half bow or a Shinobi Katana, depending on whether or not you want sweet quick draw strats or you want to be a ranged fighter with a folding bow. Like, honestly, you got 5. You could probably fit both martial arts in there. Other than that, tactics is probably a good one because you want initiative, but also you maybe don't care about initiative because of your mastery ability. We'll talk about that much later. So maybe you do, maybe you don't. And here's the thing. So you might see Skullduggery and be like, oh shit, do I need Skullduggery? I am Shinobi tagged. No, you don't need Skullduggery. That's the really interesting about Bayushi Deathdealer. You could play this completely straight. No dirty tricks, you can skip the extra access to ninjutsu, or you could only use them in certain circumstances, but you could play this completely straight as, I am just a loyal Bushi of my clan, which means that occasionally if my clan tells me to do something shifty, I'll do it, but I'm not a shiftman, I'm just, a normal-ass soldier, which is a archetype and a dichotomy of the Scorpion clan, which I believe is pretty common. There are people who are just part of the team and just do normal samurai things, but occasionally somebody will ask them to be like, hey, I need you to fight this guy in a dark alley. So, yeah, if you are definitely going the shifty pants route, I would go with Skullduggery. Honestly, besides at least one of the martial arts, the skills I'm thinking are key is Sentiment. Because you're going to want to get a lot of read on people. We're going to talk about that in a second. But you're going to want to be able to see people. And kind of get a grasp on them. And other than that, Fitness is probably, because you are still a Bushi school. Sorry, there's a lot of Bayushi Bushi alliteration jokes out there. But Fitness is probably a good one, but then it's just like, do you want Courtesy, Command? Command could be Intimidation, so that can make sense for your character, or maybe it doesn't. Courtesy might make more sense. So, like I said, focus down on one or both of your martial arts and Sentiment, and then it's kind of like, okay, what other 2s do you want? Like, do you want to make sure you go really first? Because obviously your mastery ability is way off. You might want to pick Tactics. Are you more scary or are you nice? You can pick Command over Courtesy, or you can pick both. You can double down on being sociable. Your starting honor is 40, which is higher than the Shosuro Infiltrator, so you're pretty standard, not super high, not super low. Got access to Cada rituals and Shuji. You have access to the Assess Strengths Shuji, so I should actually bring that up, because that's one of the ones that was new in... that is one of the ones that was new in Courts of Stone. So, there's that. But first, let's briefly mention your Cada selections. You've got striking as air or fire, so striking as fire. In general, even if they're situational, most katas are okay. The only exception to this generally is striking as air is just not very efficient. You could pick up striking as air if you want to go a real air focus and you really want to lean into the idea that you're all about, your Scorpion Bushi. You want to lean super hard into feint and kind of that sort of stuff, right? Like you really want to draw out your whole weakness is my strength thing. I will appear like I can't hit people and then I will slap them really hard. But that's super thematic when it's much easier to just roll once and hit somebody really hard, So I would recommend just picking striking as fire. So, assess strengths. This is a games air check, targeting the character's vigilance. It's a scheme action. And then, if you succeed, versus a person you're playing something with or otherwise evaluating them, you get to learn their ranks in games, tactics, or any one martial arts skill. Every bonus success increases your skill. And for 2 ops, you can learn all of your target's mental advantages and disadvantages. This is super important for reasons we're about to discuss, but assess strengths is a really, really good shuji for you, and you should use it a lot. Always, if you meet somebody new and you think you're going to have to fight them or something later, or you're just gathering intelligence, always challenge him to a quick round of shogi, or maybe an impromptu Sadanai match, hit him up with a Kamari Ball tournament, I don't know. Just get in there and try and suss out their strengths, because that's going to be really good, and especially you're going to want those op spends. Because a way of the Scorpion is your school ability. When you exploit a target's disadvantage as part of an initiative check for a duel or an attack action, you do not need to spend a void point, and you may reroll additional dice up to your school rank. So this is what I was talking about, why people are shit-talking the Death Dealer. Okay, yes, it is just rerolls. So if you already rolled good, it doesn't matter. And theoretically, you can reroll and you can whiff. But that gives you 3 dice to start with, and that escalates more. And remember, there are better dice of value. So obviously you want to be rerolling skill dice. But still, you could be 2 or 3 deep on a martial arts skill and your preferred ring. Meditation's going to be harder, but that's also why you have rerolls, And so you don't need to spend a void point. That's good. That means you can keep your void points for other stuff if you need them, techniques, other abilities, or just keep them for other rolls. And you get the additional reroll. So I will admit, rerolls aren't as good as, extra kept dice, but still, it's never turn down rerolls, I've learned this from lots of games. The ability to reroll is pretty good, especially if you're decent. You can go like, oh, geez, there's a lot of strife symbols on these dice that I don't want. Or, oh, geez, I really wanted to fish for some extra ops or something. So it's really good. The other key point is people are like, oh, but you got to exploit a disadvantage. Well, that's not a problem. Okay, so yes, that means you have to learn about NPCs before you fight them. That's not that crazy. I don't know. Maybe it's just, again, because I think of a lot of these as thematic choices, right? This isn't a game you're meant to optimize min-max. It's not meant to be played like D&D. On a deep fundamental level, if you look really good at first edition. So, yes, you can't just stroll up to a fight and start beating out mooks and be like, I know your disadvantage. But you can learn disadvantages a lot of ways, air opportunities at certain moments, even in initiative checks. I've just mentioned you can learn some of them in assess strengths. I believe there's an air opportunity where you can apply a disadvantage to a character if it makes sense, if they don't have theirs known. So you can kind of realize suddenly that a character has this disadvantage that didn't come up before, kind of thing. And you are a Scorpion. Your special technique, your special clan technique is, Bayushi's Whispers, who can give you information about stuff as a downtime thing. It's only once per session, but still. You could totally use that to figure out your opponent before a fight or something, So, yeah. And remember, depending on what you're doing, those rerolls can be really important. You can reroll an extra ops you need. You can just be like, I don't need ops. I just want more bonus successes. I'm using fire and striking as fire right now, so I just really want to just smack him hard. Give me all the strife symbols. You can hunt for explosions, stuff like that. And it just keeps scaling. Because honestly... my mic arm. Sorry. Honestly, if you think about it, while any number of rerolls is good, when you start to get up there, if you get 5 and 5, you're rolling 10 dice. 2 out of those 10 dice, sure, okay, maybe you blanked out on those dice. But spending a void point to do that is kind of like, with Way of the Scorpion, you get a maximum of, like, 7 or 8 dice. You can reroll a lot of those dice, and if you need to really massage your check, and you can reroll additional dice up to your school rank, so you don't have to reroll any extras. If you only have 2 bad dice, you can go Way of the Scorpion. And sure, it's only, like, it's initiative for a duel, and it's attack actions, but still, you're a Bushi school, this is kind of their thing. And Bayushi Deathdealer is really a pocket duelist school. We'll explain that later when we talk about the curriculum. And we've already mentioned the starting outfit, but yeah, so assess strengths is really key to activating Way of the Scorpion. Yes, there's a lot of subtlety, yes, there's a lot of setup, right? But that's very thematically appropriate for this school. You know, weakness is our strength. So, speaking of the school, let's talk about that curriculum. So, that yonder curriculum. Techniques. As is usual, ignore the left side of your screen for now. Won't even help you. Some of that stuff I'm going to discuss isn't even on there. But we're going to talk about your curriculum table, right? So, first off, your skill groups. You get access to martial skills. That's a good one, because, like I said, meditation's not something you start with, even though you're probably going to be doing some dueling at some point. So that's a good one to pick up. It also covers your various martial arts forms, your various, other stuff, tactics, fitness, things you're going to need. Makes sense. You've got courtesy and games in there. So social skills, especially courtesy and games, and a little bit of command. Command appears again in there too. Are going to be your major build. Like, it's funny that Bayushi Deathdealer is called Bushi Shinobi, as you can see from a lot of elements shown in there. Certain social skills, or the social skill group keep appearing. You could honestly also be a tagged Bushi courtier, but they already have a courtier school, so I'm sure that's why they didn't go for that tag. Just play a regular Bayushi manipulator. So those are pretty key, and then Skullduggery appears, so if you want to be sneaky, you've got access to it. Skullduggery, let's see, I'm just double-checking the table. No, so trade skills don't appear, so your couple of early ranks of Skullduggery and stuff are on point, and if you are going to be sneaky, you should pick them up now at your lower ranks, because it disappears from your table later, to some extent. So you want to make sure to be good at being sneaky and shifty early. So you get access to General Cada rank 1, we'll talk about that later. And again, there's 2 of these things that are new in Courts of Stone, though it's been a while since Courts of Stone came out, so I guess we'll just, we can assume that you know how to do. But one of them is Spiteful Loss, a Fire Shuji, rank 1. It's a pretty good one. Basically, whenever you fail a check, you can forfeit a glory. And if it's one opportunity, if you fail a check, you can forfeit 1 glory. And then each participant gains 1 strife equal 1 plus your shortfall strife to all participants. So, this is basically you are a tactical sore loser. And considering that strifing people out so you can make them compromised, or so you can hurt their starting strife. Because remember, between scenes, you only heal to half your strife cap. Is it half your current strife or half your strife cap? I'd have to look up. Sorry, I've been busy with other games, so some L5R minutia escape me. But you don't necessarily heal all your strife right away, so if you stress somebody out and then you get into a fight or a duel with them, you can put them much closer to being compromised than you are. And also, in general, that helps alleviate some things for certain TNs. For instance, assess strengths is target number vigilance. So if you lose a game, deliberately stress everybody out, and then choose to play them again, demand a rematch because your honor demands it or whatever, then you have a much easier op to do assess strengths, which is a very, very Scorpion thing to do, all right? Like, that's the kind of tactics that are bread and butter at this school. And obviously, okay, maybe you don't want to do it that way, but still, Spiteful Loss, appearing weak, and using that as a leverage against people is totally what this school is about. You're going to see that trick a couple of times. And we like to talk about here on Enter the Dojo about different ways and different builds you can do. I think the key one here is basically, as I mentioned earlier, is you can be completely legit and you can be a completely normal Bushi, or you can be that Scorpion guy that people think you are, and you can be, rude, underhanded, spiteful, sneaky. And actually, honestly, you could probably even subset that, depending on whether or not you want to do shifty stuff. Like, you could honestly make an intimidating, spiteful, annoying samurai who doesn't use any underhanded tricks otherwise. Like, you don't have to combine Deceitful Strike with Spiteful Loss, but you could. So there's kind of, you can degree your Scorpionitude. You can play this legit as maybe not quite a Junshin type. You could certainly use this as a basis for it. But you could play it as a, I know how to do stuff. Like, I know about the shifty side, but I'm still just, I'm a normal-ass samurai doing normal-ass samurai things, and maybe if they ask me to do something, I can do it. You could play that where you're not necessarily, like, a Scorpion Hitman, but still you're like, oh, I'm going to embrace the Scorpion, I'm going to be provocative and possibly, look bad. After all, Spiteful Loss does cost glory. But I'm going to look bad in public, but I'm going to be effective against people. And then you can go the whole way and be like, nah, I'm a sneakman. But so that's kind of your whole rank 1 deal. Well, actually, no, it's not, because I haven't talked about Deceitful Strike yet. Sorry, I got distracted talking about different ways you could wield this class, basically. You can take this school and work on it. So, Deceitful Strike was also added in Courts of Stone. Again, this is why I say that they benefited from being in a later book. So, basically, when you make a martial arts check during a duel or clash, you can spend opportunity to make it look like an accident, basically. So, or make it so look like your attack was not meant to be lethal. So, let's say you're fighting somebody, and either it is your personal desire, or, hey, you have orders, because that can very easily come up. You do have a Shinobi tag. You might be operating with your motives secretive, but, like, you can be like, oh, I'm going to do a finishing blow, and you can be like, that's definitely going to kill that guy, and then you can be like, whoa, look at me, I've rolled a lot of opportunity. Everyone who has a vigilance less than whatever, who's observing, believes that I didn't mean that to be lethal. So, you can use this to kind of assassinate people without assassinating them, make it look like an accident, which is a really cool technique, and also is very much in line with this school. Make it look like you did something you didn't intend to. And depending on the type of duel, honestly, it can be easier to get away with. Like, I believe it's mentioned in the book that in a duel to first blood, a death is an unfortunate accident. It's not intentional, but the intent is to strike the enemy, so it's bad. A duel to first strike, where you just have to, like, lightly touch, that's more like a murder investigation. Like, holy shit, you did not need to hit that guy that hard. You killed him. And if your intent is a duel to the death, then that is the goal. That's where you get all those secret double bonus points from. But yeah, so if you're not playing a more duelist-oriented Bayushi Deathdealer, you could probably skip Deceitful Strike. You can still use it in clashes, obviously, because those are like mini duels. But you might want to, if you're playing this more honest, or you're not going to get in a lot of duels, you might skip it. I would recommend not, though, because it is an ninjutsu, so you only get special access in this rank. So it's good to pick up now, and make sure you pick it up now as a high priority if at any point you're ever going to want to do this. But yeah, that's rank 1. Rank 2, you get social skills as a group, again, emphasizing, courtesy, games, even command can be useful there. You get your other rank of skullduggery, or your other block of skullduggery, I should say, in the rank, because you can buy a couple ranks in the table. But martial arts, melee, and meditation appear, that's good. Between martial skills here and meditation here, you can decently get some initiative in a duel. And again, this kind of shapes your thing. You've got a broad spectrum of social skills you can work with to kind of pick what your build is, whether you're subtle and that kind of way, or you're more in-your-face scary man. You get rank 1 to 2 air shuji. There's a lot of options there we'll talk about. The big one here is you can get access to a in-curriculum Iejutsu cut Rising Blade. You don't get early access, but again, this is me talking about it. It's a pocket dueling school. This being in your curriculum makes total sense. You are the primary Bushi school of your clan, and definitely of your family. So you're going to be the Yojimbo. You're going to be taking duels. You're going to be doing bodyguarding duties where a quick draw is needed, that kind of stuff, self-defense shit. And Rising Blade is good for you because that's the one that if they're compromised, the TN is their vigilance, so it's 1. Hey, that whole, Spiteful Loss thing is looking real good. Yeah, you're basically, this thematically works for you because of its target number, and also works for the build where you may be using this as a school to engage in duels. And hey, if you hit somebody with a finishing blow with Rising Blade, it's entirely possible you're going to kill him. So there's that Deceitful Strike opportunity right there. Now, the other thing is they get access to Deadly Sting, one of the core book, because the Scorpion are known for their poisons. So, in case you forgot, Deadly Sting is the one where you can... what's the exact phrasing? You can use a poison and you can ready a weapon and poison it at the same time. Yeah, you need a concealable weapon and a dose of poison. Oh, hey, the Scorpion Clan's called it in the description of the technique even. So you need to make a martial arts air check. If you succeed, you poison your weapon, and then your target suffers physical damage equal to the deadliness of your weapon plus bonus successes. And also may or may not suffer the poison effect. For instance, I believe is it called deadly poison or lethal poison? The basic damage dealing poison increases your deadliness in your next strike by so much, so that would increase the effect of the weapon. It's got to be concealable, but hey, remember, you could pick up a Shinobi Katana. And also, by the way, that's another thing I should mention. While Rising Strike is really good for its TN, you may be like, oh, I don't get access early. Remember, the Shinobi Katana is a concealable weapon. That's its whole shtick, is that it's meant to be it's a extended sheath with a shortened blade, but obviously it's somewhere probably between a katana and a wakizashi length, so that, because you have to make it's either a check or you require a certain number of vigilance to notice, but it's not obvious that, like, hey, that's just a wakizashi blade he drew. Like, it doesn't stand out immediately. There's a little bit of technique to how they're made, but it has the concealable quality, which means that you can ready it as part of an attack action, so you can use it to pseudo Iaijutsu already, because it's got a quick draw ability built in. Now, obviously, if you don't want to use a Shinobi Katana, or you feel like people are catching on to your trick, by the time you get to rank 2, you might be like, oh, I'll just get regular Rising Blade. But I should mention that at rank 1, if you pick the Shinobi Katana option, you already can pseudo Iaijutsu. You can quick draw, which also makes you very scary as a duelist, because you have that ability to quick draw. You can just wait for finishing blows. But yeah, so Deadly Sting works with a concealable weapon, so that'll work with your knife or your Shinobi Katana. And thematically, it's appropriate. You can poison, and then it's deadliness plus successes. And so that can be a really nasty way to just hurt somebody real bad. And if you want to, you can inflict critical strikes from move during the attack too. So it works really well for your school if you're playing an underhanded build, like we said. And again, this is also a thing where maybe you pick up Deadly Sting because it's a ninjutsu and you only get access to it in the school rank, so you're like, oh, I know how to do that. I don't do that, but if you ever needed to do it, you could pull it off, and it's a really effective thing, and like I said, it's on point for Scorpion. Rank 3, Martial Skills comes back, and Courtesy comes back, but you got a couple of interesting things. So you've got Smithing, which I think makes sense because of the stuff like, weapon... Well, first of all, you're a Bushi school. Knowing how to maintain your own armor, like, honestly, it's kind of... Some people might even find it weird that it's not until rank 3 you can pick up this artisan skill. But they've only got so many slots, in the curriculum. But also, like, the Shinobi Katana is supposed to be a Scorpion invention. It's part of their whole, technological advancement. They figured out a way to wiggle the katana and get some extra ability out of the over the incredibly obvious, oh shit, that's a ninjato. That's a Shinobi weapon kind of thing. So, smithing makes sense in that you can use it to refine, repair, maintain your own weapons. Nobody has to know what's your weird special weapon tricks are, anything like that. That sort of thing. Got a lot of different abilities and sort of tricks you can do with that. Plus, you can also just maintain your arms and armor. Normal-ass stuff. I believe arrow making's under smithing, or bow making is, so that also can work if you want to fletch your own arrows, because it's not super emphasized yet, especially at this rank, because you get close combat kata, but remember, you can get a folding half bow, and your next step is ranged kata, so it is a thing where you might actually want to, be building up to being a ranged combatant too. And honestly, I think the way the technique groups are split up, how should I say this? The emphasis of Bayushi can focus either equally on the archery or the close combat aspects, or do both interchangeably. Like, there's no reason you can't still carry your half bow or acquire a bow of some kind somewhere else, and also have your close combat options. And it works pretty good to balance out both of those techniques. Or you can just throw shuriken at people. Shuriken aren't even forbidden. You can just throw knives at people. But yeah, so smithing can help with that, and you get survival at rank 3, which could be a low skill. Now, obviously, you can use survival for horse stuff, and it's funny, there's a one horse-related kata in Path of the Waves, which, as of this recording, is still not in PDF yet. I just checked today. But it theoretically emphasizes that all samurai should know how to ride a horse, and I'm like, well, I mean, okay, you can roll ring dice, but I don't know if there's enough survival going around that quite makes that match up, but sure. You could use it for normal horseback riding, or I think the intent is that if you're out in the field doing spooky samurai ninja things, yeah, you're both at once, you're a Bayushi Deathdealer, that's how that works, you can benefit from it to do stuff. So, and then you've got close combat, 1 to 3 rank, and you've got another couple of new things. So first up is, what is that one? It's Cunning Distraction. Is it even in this? I really gotta double check if the guy making the freaking card things actually is. Yeah, okay. Cunning Distraction, there it is. So, first of all, it notes, by the way, that this is a cheating thing. Anybody who's got a vigilance of 2 or higher, observing or engaging in it does. So you want to be careful doing this. But the result is if you succeed on the test, because it's a skullduggery, you swap their initiative order. So remember how I said that, maybe you don't care about initiative. Here's one of the ways. You can be like, I'm going to roll dog shit, and then I'm going to Cunning Distraction. And you can spend opportunities to increase the required, because it's only a T and 2, and you get it at school rank 3, which is not the earliest you could theoretically take it if you could actually fully access it. But, piece of jewelry, all kinds of things. You can do something that offsets their balance and means you get the initiative, so you can totally, deliberately tank your initiative. Be like, nah, doesn't matter. And then flip it around and be like, boom, now I'm super fast, and I'm gonna get you. You gotta be careful because of the cheating effect, but in a battlefield clash, it's really useful. In street duels, it's really useful. And if you just have boatloads of opportunities, it's very handy, and is, again, very on theme. There's a kind of first-last mechanic in there. We'll talk about that more when we get to their master ability, but playing with initiative is definitely on theme for you, and it can be very handy because, maybe you did not make meditation or tactics your strong suit. And then All Shall Fear Me. That's a Shuji. That's a new one. I'm going to assume it's rank 3. Yeah. So that's Commander Performance Fire. Probably Commander if it's you. Basically, if you succeed, each target receives 2 strife when they choose you as the target of a social skill check. If you fail, they receive 4 strife. And then you can spend opportunities to increase that. And basically, All Shall Fear Me is like the intimidation aura effect, the menacing kind of thing where you're just like, nah, dude, I'm scary right now. This is really useful for intrigues because it can kind of make it so people don't want to target you. And setting up duel conditions could be an intrigue sort of thing, negotiations. But just in general, this is a fairly decent tech for you because as with Spiteful Loss, you're not necessarily against, like inherently, you're not necessarily against appearing scary or emotive with fire to stress other people out, right? Scorpions are willing to play the provocateur and kind of, much like the Akoma, and kind of like play against samurai stereotypes to work on people, but in an arguably more villainous, like obviously villainous way. Like, this is your All Shall Fear Me as though, my laugh is evil kind of thing. I'm going to take a drink of water, and I might sneeze. Hold on. Okay, sneeze passed. The water was important first, though. My throat's a little dry. I'm talking a lot. But yeah, so All Shall Fear Me, very thematically appropriate, especially if you are, like you said, being a more loud build of the Bayushi Deathdealer, and it can really help you do that thing you do where you lower everybody's vigilance. Because honestly, you really want people's vigilance to be lowered in a lot of cases as a Bayushi Deathdealer, especially if you are a sneaky pants type, if you're trying to do naughty stuff. So the ability to possibly stress the shit out of a lot of people at once is good. You do need to watch out, though. I don't think I mentioned it earlier. If you do fail the All Shall Fear Me check, you take 4 strife. So you want to make sure you're doing it from a position of strength. Otherwise, I love this effect. Otherwise, you literally just look like an asshole, right? Like, you're not scary. You're just a jerk. A really fun element. So at rank 4, you get Scholar Skills, which is super interesting. I mentioned earlier, Sentiment is probably pretty important because you're going to want to be figuring out people's disadvantages and stuff and seeing through their lies and whatnot. you don't really have an opportunity to take any more in curriculum apart from your starting skill set until now, which is really interesting. But also, hey, Scholar Skills gives you stuff like medicine. And that I think that makes sense as a more advanced branch of like, hey, once you're starting to get up here at this school, you're actually like, one, it makes sense because Scholar Skills have the more governmental type stuff in there, right? They have the more logistical, oh, hey, I have to be in charge of people skills, but also fun times with sentiment and medicine and stuff. A real interesting selection at your higher level. And then you've got games and tactics and command. So your core social, a couple of your core social skills return, and tactics, good for match combats. You might be in a higher leadership position or just doing better at initiative if you so choose. This is where we mentioned before you get ranged Cada rank 1 to 4. We'll talk about that later. Honestly, it's really interesting if overall looking at this rank, this is kind of a rank of, okay, you're rank 4 now. We need you to stop fucking around, bumping off people in dark alleys or whatever, and we need you to actually take a lead, because you get Rallying Cry, a Fire Shuji, which requires command, which adds, at the end of the energized targets, a number of characters in the scene during a skirmish or mass battle, and you can make enemies receive strife with the opportunities, which is really important, but also your allies add opportunity strife, so you get free opportunities. So this is a really key ability for you, I think. And technically it's a rank later, like this is a rank 3 technique normally, I think. Yeah, it sounds about right. Sorry, I'm cross-checking a lot of reference materials. One of the reasons why I like to do schools that are just still in the core book is because that's all your reference materials are on one point, so it gets a little scattered now. But yeah, so like technically you could pick it up earlier if you want, but I think, as I said earlier, thematically it makes sense that it's in this rank. Like, if you learn it before, you're technically skipping ahead in school, in your school curriculum, like your advanced placement. Because this is the one which really seems to emphasize with stuff like Scholar Skills, Tactics, Command, Rallying Cry, A Samurai's Fate, the idea that, like, okay, now you're more leadership roles type stuff. But, the fact that with opportunities, you can use it in a skirmish to give people strife, again, real important. And same with Mass Battle, you can give enemies panic, too. And the other thing is A Samurai's Fate, which is a Void Shuji. You get this in a rank early. Actually, do you get a rank early? Hold on, let me check something. I want to pop up on the core rules and double check something. So, yes, Rallying Cry is normally rank 3, and A Samurai's Fate is rank 4 already. So why does it have special access? That is probably a misprint that is never going to get fixed. But yeah, so A Samurai's Fate is not actually early access. They probably thought they were putting it... Whatever, FFG is bad at tables. And maybe they'll not be bad at tables, but maybe they'll still be bad at tables. We'll talk about that stuff at the end. We got some news things. But if you're curious about what that does, in case you forgot, A Samurai's Fate is the one where you make a command void checks in skirmishes, and targets ignore critical strikes, and in a mass combat you get that kind of Fearless Army ability. So again, emphasizing the point of like, hey, you're at a higher level, you're able to like talk to people and kind of govern and lead at this rank. And if you don't want it, you can skip it, but it can work to like really help you out if you're taking part in larger scale fights. Rank 5, social skills comes back, and martial melee, martial range, tactics, basically doubling down on your core school focuses. Initiative, fighting, social stuff. You get access to rank 1 to 5 Cada. We'll talk about that later. And then another couple of 2 new abilities. So, first off, one of them is... What is it? Stillness of Death? Yeah, Stillness of Death. When you perform a ninjutsu check, you can spend opportunity to increase the TN of the next check a character makes to resist a critical strike by 1 per opportunity. So, it has to be when you perform a check to do that. So, stuff like Deadly Sting, stuff like Cunning Distraction. I don't believe Deceitful Strike is the same as Stillness of Death. So, it doesn't give you a lot of opportunities, but it's a decent setup to be like, yeah, I'm just really good at making people die. And it lasts until the start of your next turn. So that can be good to be like, if you're, doing all that stuff with like Deadly Sting, you can be like, okay, my weapon is poison, my deadliness is enhanced, I can inflict a critical strike of X severity, and then I can make it more difficult with Stillness. Or, hey, Cunning Distraction, I'm going to swap our initiatives, and then I'm going to crit you, kind of thing. Obviously, you should pick it up because it's in there, unless you have avoided picking up ninjutsu techniques, but I will say that's definitely something you can probably skip if that's not in your build. And then the other one is Hidden in Smoke. This is another new one in Courts of Stone, another new Shuji. That's an air Shuji, and it's higher ranked. But basically, if you succeed, you can hide your goals. Anytime anybody does an action or ability that would reveal your goal, it reveals a fake goal instead. And if it is during an intrigue scene, you gain 1 momentum toward whatever social agenda you're currently working on that makes sense. You can hit additional people with this ability. The TN is their vigilance, and you can increase the momentum. So, 1, thematically, super appropriate. Hidden in Smoke, I'm doing something completely different. You didn't even know what my true goals are. Perfect for Scorpion. Also gives you a lot of utility in... Because in Intrigues, which is something you might be a little bit weaker in, you've got some decent opportunities, but you might be a little bit weaker in an Intrigue. This gives you kind of a double-edged sword. 1, it means that anybody who's trying to figure out what you're doing, which is an actual, another social agenda, they're going to goof it up if they're the one you targeted with this. And it gives you momentum towards your goals. So this can be, 1, a good way that you can contribute to social scenes, even if you're a fighter. It takes you a while to get here, but that's obviously really good. If you're a duelist, you might actually be in a lot of social scenes, you know? But just thematically, it's so appropriate. Like, this is going to be a major one you're going to want to pick up. And that's all that. So then we get to the mastery ability, which is Strike First, Strike Last. When you inflict a critical strike in a duel or skirmish, treat the deadliness of your weapon as increased by the difference between your initiative values, whether it's higher or lower. So, hey... On the one hand, oh, I've gone last. Oh, no. Well, I'm just going to do a fancy pants special crit on you, and I'm going to, you think you're going so much faster than me, but I'm going to hit you because you thought I was slow. Or I'm just going to roll super high on tactics or meditation, and I'm going to have a super high initiative, and I'm going to hit you really, really hard. I like that it's both. Right? It's based on the difference. So what you want is not a close fight. You either want to appear really, really weak or just completely overwhelm your opponent. And with Cunning Distraction as kind of a synergy, you can really flip that around. It synergizes with Stillness and Death, which increases your deadliness. Basically, this mastery ability, it takes a while to get there, but it really brings this school together because it's like, okay, I don't care if I go last. And honestly, you can play a little strategically with this too. You can see how well your opponent is, an opponent or multiple opponents are rolling and be like, I'll keep these number of shitty dice. I'll give myself a low initiative. And if you want, you can swap it if it's valid for Cunning Distraction, or if not, you can just deal with going later by going powerfully. It's a really interesting one. So, let us really quick talk about those technique groups then. So, we begin with rank 1 General Cada. So, General Cada is anything that is not a ranged or a close combat Cada. Funny how that works. There's a couple of opportunities here. Obviously, if you picked up Striking as Air, you can pick up Striking as Fire, like you should have done from the beginning. Or, hey, you can be Striking as Air later and be like, I'll make this work sometimes. But more importantly, I think the couple of key ones are 1, Soaring Strike. I recommend this a lot. 1, because you're a pseudo-ranged school, but maybe you didn't pick the half bow to start with, or something. Sorry. I took a quick break in between sections, and now I'm yawning for some reason. Probably because I need to eat some food. Maybe between slides. Anyway, Soaring Strike is good because it gives you a ranged option even if you don't have a ranged weapon right now. If you do start with a knife, you can throw it. I guess you can throw a Shinobi Katana too. I don't know if that... I have to double check, but I think that counts because it's only one-handed. Or can be one-handed, however you want to look at it. And just, it's a good general technique to have as a lot of Bushi schools, especially when you are one who might be doing ranged stuff. They can also mesh pretty well with Deadly Sting, I believe. Or maybe it won't, because Deadly Sting is an action on its own. It can mesh well with other stuff you do, I guess, to hurt people and throw stuff at them. And then Warrior's Resolve. We've already talked about before how your Void Point economy is going to be slightly better because to exploit disadvantages for attacks and stuff, which you'll want to be doing a decent amount of the time because you have special rerolls for it, you don't have to spend a Void Point, so you may have some extra Void Points floating around, and Warrior's Resolve is just good to have anyway. and you might actually have the economy to work on it and to get some fatigue back. Also, even though it's not recommended, obviously recommend Courtier's Resolve, because that's also Strife, which is going to be very important to you, especially as a duelist, but it's not in your curriculum, so that's just an extra thing. That's really it. There are a lot of rank 1 general katas, but it's not necessarily super diverse, so it's kind of easy to go through. What there are a lot of is rank 1 to 2 air shujis, so let's talk about those decent pools. So I put Artisans Appraisal in here. This is when you do an Artisan Skill Air, Performance Air, or Games Air. You can spend extra opportunity to learn ring values of a target, and all advantages and disadvantages attached to that ring that are not of the curse type, I guess. So nothing that's supernatural, but still really, really good. You want to learn advantages and disadvantages, and it lets you scope out your opponent even more, much like Assess Strengths does. And also the other one is if they're an NPC, you can learn their demeanor, which can be very helpful for picking what kind of approaches and stuff you want to do. So because that meshes very well with some of the skills you have, and thematically, it's pretty good. I also recommend possibly Feigned Opening. That's a rank 2. You have to do it during a skirmish, so it's not as effective as a duelist, but basically you feint, you do reduce the TN against a target next, by making it appear that you've got an opening, and then you can add additional targets. And then, so that's really good if you're doing a skirmish or mass combat build, which you can do. You've got command in the school several points. You could be a leader. And then Prey on the Weak is another rank 2 that's pretty good. As a scheme action, you make a courtesy air check targeting a compromised character, and then you must make them immediately unmask, or they must forfeit glory equal to your air ring to leave the scene. And then you can learn their disadvantages this way if they unmask, or other stuff. That's just very thematically, Prey on the Weak is very thematically appropriate for you to be, like, strike at that weakened moment and either push a character to unmask, or, push a character to retreat. Which, by the way, because remember, Finishing Blow triggers when you become compromised or when you unmask, because theoretically compromised characters could enter into a duel. So Prey on the Weak is a total gotcha moment in a duel if the target is already compromised. That'll be pretty rare, but it's definitely a thing where it's like, oh shit, I can either forfeit the duel and leave, or I can unmask, at which point Finishing Blow. But just for your general stuff, it really helps reinforce some of your more social options. So I would most heartily recommend Artisans Appraisal and Prey on the Weak, with Feint Opening being a second one, especially if you're, or a third one, and especially if you're doing a lot of skirmishes or mass combats. So rank 1 to 3 close kata. So much like the next category, this is probably going to be more broadened out by Path of Waves, but I just checked today, the PDF is still not out. Hopefully soon, even though there's a lot of stuff going on, but you'd figure PDFs are something that people could arrange remotely, especially considering nobody's going to gaming stores anyway, so there's no need to pursue whatever. Sorry, I'm not going to shut up about that. I think it's really dumb, and I hope that gets fixed soon, because of things. But Thunderclap Strike is the real winner here, because that is a close combat kata that is rank 3, and is thematically appropriate because it's air, and you can slap people away from you. Really good if you're trying to be a one-on-one combatant and a lot of people are crowding you. You can kind of swing that around. But some good runners up if you didn't pick up Crossing Blade at rank 2. That's a good one to pick up as a decent focus for you. And Veiled Menace is also just really good. Hey, guess what? If you're attacking somebody one-handed, if they're disoriented, you can spend 1 op to crit, and then basically pseudo Razor Edged. It's really, again, thematically appropriate. If enemies are disoriented, you can really spin it around and hit them, and give them the free crits. But yeah, Thunderclap Strike's the real winner. There are probably some more in Path of Waves, but I don't have a full tech list exactly of what rank everything is and what they all do, so I can't make any extra recommendations. But there's a few options in there. Same with rank 1 to 4 ranged kata. There's only 3 ranged kata in the core book, but there's quite a few more. There's at least twice that, I think, in Path of Waves. So obviously, Pelting Hail is the only one we can put on right now because I know what rank that is. But there should be a couple, depending on their ranks. There's, I think it's Swirling Viper style, which is you add extra successes to, or you get extra effect based on how many range bands away you are from a target. So if you're moving back, which can be very thematically appropriate for the Scorpion. There's shots that are like when you're making a blind shot. There's doing a like meteoric, big high arching shot, like it's Princess Mononoke kind of thing. I don't remember what Wasp's Spite does. Does that give strife to the target? Because Pelting Hail is not the target. I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's a couple of other options that suit really well if you are doing a ranged build for your school. Keep an open mind. Otherwise, basically, this is just, did you not pick up any ranged Cada yet? Pick up whatever ones you like. And then rank 1 to 5 returns to Cada. The ones I can most heartily recommend. There are another couple of rank 5s in Path of Waves, but heartily recommend I would first and foremost striking as Void. Striking it as Void is really good. It, the whole, oh, I whiffed, I can do another action, or I can immediately change stance kind of stuff. It's really useful for a lot of things. And then the other one is Pin the Fan, because, so that's, do damage equal, that's a ranged attack, targets their vigilance. If the target suffers damage equal to base damage, plus bonus successes times 2. And if they're incapacitated, you can spend 1 up to crit. Hey, guess what? If you make your mastery ability, because it's 2 times deadliness plus successes, combine that with strike first, strike last, that's a very serious crit on somebody. You're going to start killing people with bow shots, if you can make the TN for Pin the Fan. Like, that's a big deal. So that also goes pretty highly recommended. Overall, there's a lot of flexibility in the school, which makes sense because the Bayushi are family and a school who are kind of all about playing their appearances. That is the actual moral of the Scorpion and the Frog story that the little teacher supposedly taught Bayushi, that you appear like you can't do something to get your goals done, and then in the end you're like, no, dude, I was actually strong the whole time. Like, it's not, I could swim, so you can survive any situation. It's, oh, Frog, you thought I couldn't swim, which is why you trusted me. I actually can swim, and thus you are dead. Kind of a thing, right? Like, it's not about being a dickhead. It's about making it so that other people can't sense your weaknesses. Other people don't realize how strong you are and where you're really weak. Like, you put up a facade. So, because of that, you can be very flexible. You can be all about fire and intimidation and provocation and be like, ooh, I'm real spooky, ooh, fear, oh, she'll fear me. And then, maybe in a combat you get real serious, or you can be super subtle and stuff, but actually be very deadly. You can be completely honorable, which would be incredibly surprising for a Scorpion to be like, no, I don't know any dirty tricks, I'm just really good at my job. Or you can totally play to those stereotypes and be good at all kinds of dirty tricks. Or you can do both. You can do close combat, or you can do ranged, and you can do a little bit in between. So they're a very flexible school. It kind of reminds me of, I think, some of the stuff we talked about with Niten a little bit, where it's like, obviously they have an undercurrent of like some philosophical stuff. Like, you could be more warrior poet kind of thing, or natural philosopher as well. But a lot of their combat attitude was just whatever works. Like, they had access to a lot of the shiftier techniques and stuff, so you could totally play up the Musashi style pragmatism. Bayushi Deathdealer is quite similar. So let's talk about some of that extra stuff after a quick transition of slide. All right. So for you, it was a short rip. For me, that was a long one. I had to get lunch and stuff in there. So real quick, Scorpion Clan. This is pretty much the same as, just state the slide we used in the Shosuro Enter the Dojo. So as a Scorpion Clan, because, if we calculated every possible clan and family output, we'd be here a while. And the Scorpion one really does play pretty well to the Bayushi Deathdealer's strengths. So Scorpion Clan gives you Air Ring, so that means you can easily do Air 2, and then Fire, or Air 3, and then Fire 3 if you want. And you get starting Skullduggery. Your status is higher because you're one of the core clans, as I like to call it. You're right up there, around the Imperial area, one of the hands. And you've got the families, Bayushi, Shosuro, Soshi, Yogo. And we'll talk about all those in a second. Otherwise, this is pretty short. It's just generally, it gives you that rank in Skullduggery, so you can double up if you want. You can get very good at Skullduggery, which is good, because like we said, it doesn't appear super frequently in your curriculum, especially at higher levels. The air works well. And I also, it's important to remember that just because you took Skullduggery doesn't mean you have to be shifty. Skullduggery is also kind of the knowledge underworld / streetwise kind of skill. Like, you can roll it to understand how people would be underhanded and understand criminal networks and stuff, which is also a very Scorpion thing to be like, whoa, dude, I understand the underworld. I'm not part of it, but I understand it. And that's really all there is there. We'll keep this section short, because the video is already super long. And now a slightly longer section, talking about the four families. So you've got the Bayushi, Shosuro, Soshi, and Yogo, as we outlined. So obviously, hey, guess what? Bayushi meshes very well. The Bayushi family will give you either air or fire, meaning you can go 3 and 3 in your core school rings, fire and air between clan and family, and then you get a 2 in something that matters, like a water or maybe a void. Your skills are courtesy and design, so that can kind of shore up what kind of options you have. Design does give you an artisan skill, which can mesh with some of your shuji choices and general ability, but not necessarily is present core in your school. You do get a glory of 44 and starting koku of 8. The Shosuro family is air or water and gets courtesy or performance. This can also make a decent one if you're trying to play a Shosuro who's a little bit more straight-laced, a little more physical, and openly a Bushi. That's a pretty decent build, because you can go your air focus, which means if you want, you can wrap around into something else, or you could take water and kind of do that as your secondary thing. Performance meshes with some shuji options you can take later, and courtesy is still good, so that can be kind of an even or on which one fits you, like it can work for you. Starting glory is 40. Soshi is air or void, again, meshes very well with your kind of build. You can wrap around or you can go in void. You have access to design and theology. Now, obviously, since you're not a Shugenja, theology is not as important, but you can get scholar skills later. It could be interesting to play up your spiritualism, but design comes back. And Yogo family is earth or void, because they're an adopted family kind of thing. They get composition and theology, slightly lower glory, and have to deal with all the Yogo stuff. But if you wanted to play a Yogo who was a Bushi, since there is not a school like that, that would be as good as anything, a choice to play it up. And, get composition in there. You can write, draw, paint kind of stuff. Earth or void are not necessarily super tight for you, but you can make earth work. Earth being a very important ring for Bushi. Right, like going whole hog on air and fire can make you seem a little fragile, obviously. So earth or water from Shosuro could be used to massage that without needing to go all in on your starting, ring bonuses. But stuff can still work. And void, like I said, can be thematically appropriate later because you can do void stuff. Overall, I think the Bayushi family meshes best with the school, but Shosuro can also in a pinch, which makes sense because I think for a while at Dawn of the Empire, it was only those two families. Because Yogo was sometime during the war with Shadow, and Soshi was after the Day of Thunder, so they got added those last couple families a little late, which is probably why Scorpion are kind of weird thematically, because they're like two really core families which are almost interchangeable at points, and then they got a couple of extra weird Shugenja magic families. In general, if you're looking at outside of clan and school stuff, or clan and family stuff, your options that will mesh well with Bayushi are going to be air or fire, and social or martial skills. Meditation, tactics work, for instance. Courtesy, command, performance can work. Artisan skills can also work with some of the stuff you can take, like I recommended at rank 2. You should take Artisans Appraisal, for instance, so that can help. If there's a family that gives games off the top of my head doesn't stick out, but if there is, that'd be a great fit. Games is a very key skill for you for a lot of reasons. But overall, yeah, I think Bayushi meshes best, but you could totally be a member of the Soshi or Yogo families and be like, well, I don't have any magic skills, so they sent me to be a Bushi somewhere, not a courtier. Especially considering that both Yogo schools that are out now are Shugenja. Presumably the other, if Soshi gets another school right away in Celestial Realms, it'll probably be their Shadow Magic school, which will have access to different techniques, so that'll also be a Shugenja thing. Like, I think Soshi has a strong background for maybe a Magistrate type, Bushi Courtier school, kind of like what Kitsuki looks like, but that probably won't be for a while. So speaking of for a while, and speaking of books publishing, let's move on to our final slide, we'll jump into the news and we won't really have much more to talk about with this. And generally that kind of brings us to the conclusion. So overall, what do I think? Are they a weak school? No, by no means. Obviously, they require setup. They're not the only school that can require that. I know there's been some discussion about, Kakita Swordsmith gets a pattern for free. That's kind of, excessive, isn't it? But I honestly, I don't think so, because to apply a pattern, you have to spend, multiple downtime actions making a freaking sword, right? That requires setup. So, I don't think that setup is necessarily unbalanced, and depending on your game, it may not be appropriate, right? This is true for a lot of schools. Like there's some concern coming out of Path of Waves with like the treasure hunter and stuff. If for instance, if you're playing a normal ass samurai character and you're like, I want to be a treasure hunter, I'm gonna be like, why? That doesn't make any goddamn sense, you know? Sorry, I stopped talking for a little bit, and so I had some phlegm built up. But so there will be situations in where your game master is going to be like, oh, like if you're doing a Shadowlands campaign or something like that, some kind of meat grinder type thing, don't do that. The Bayushi Deathdealer needs setup. They need opportunities to engage in social combat with people, social conflict, and build on that. And then when they want to, they apply their actual goal is whether that's, oh, I'm a shinobi tag, so I have a secret duty to assassinate somebody or something. Or however it works out, right? But you then, after analyzing the target, you then get them into a fight, which they think they can win because you appear weak or whatever, and then you slam them, you flummox them, and you can even use this to permanently eliminate rivals, right? Like fundamentally, the school is about leveraging your opponent's weaknesses and leveraging your own apparent weakness. And it has a lot of, like I said, interesting in the included techniques, both special access and just general curriculum focus. There's a lot of interesting play with initiative. There's a lot of interesting play with focusing on dealing strife to other characters, like stressing them out to make it easier for you to do your job, whether that's, slapping them in an intrigue or killing them in a duel, however it works out, right? So I think that to some players and some game masters, that kind of slow setup will not work in all campaigns, and it may not be as entertaining. But scaling-wise, their school ability is pretty decent because it does scale, right? You don't need to spend a void point. That opens up your void point economy for other things. Least of all is you don't need to worry about it with attack checks, hopefully. You can save it for other stuff, activating abilities like Warrior's Resolve, Courtier's Resolve, etc. Special techniques, whatever it requires. That should hopefully free up your void point economy. And, like I said, your reroll ability keeps scaling, so it encourages you to build your pools bigger, build your rings bigger, and use them and make sure you have the opportunity, because you never know when you're going to need to reroll some of those dice. The game is inherently random, and I know that's kind of weird to talk about with some people, but it is true. Like, there's statistical expectations, but there are still, that means, like on a bell curve, you'll still roll some of those tail numbers. Like, sometimes you'll roll great, your dice will be super hot, you don't need to reroll at all. In which case, it doesn't matter, it was free, so it's not like you're going to be spending a void point and then wasting it, right? You can look at the dice and go, I don't need to activate my school ability. Or you can look at the dice and go, wow, I completely balls that up, good thing I'm rank 5 and I can reroll, 7 in these bad boys? For free, right? And obviously then you're like, oh no, I've spent my reroll and I got shit the second time. Well, if you already failed, you lose nothing, right? It's only in, like, edge cases, in that case, you're taking a risk. Which is, I don't know, that sounds good. There's so many people, not so many people, but I've heard a couple of small complaints that, players think that raises, sorry, I completely blanked on what the phrase I was looking for there. Players, of the previous editions are like, oh man, I miss raises and classic roll and keep. I feel like this isn't gambly enough. To which I say, I've listened to a few actual plays of people playing 4th edition and and there are plenty of times where people are like, oh shit, I rolled great, I'm good at this, I probably should have called, like, at least one raise for something, but they didn't think of anything that would be good to call raises for, or they just didn't think about it, and so, 5th edition kind of puts that on the other end, right? You roll them and then you're like, oh, I've got some opportunities, that's good, I can activate them, but especially with, like, rerolls, you do have to, that's still got some of that gambling effect you need to consider, like, oh, do I need more successes to succeed, or do I want to lean more opportunity? When you're picking, you can kind of pick and choose and massage stuff and take that risk. And Bayushi Deathdealer, if you did like that gambling feel, really is like that, because you can always, if you're applying your school ability, you can always go back for more. You can always go, a couple of these dice could do better. But overall, in terms of, like, raw focus on your curriculum, if you're trying to advance in your school ranks and also be good, I think it's fine. It has a strong social sub-focus, which is probably part of why they have a shinobi tag. And they can function perfectly well as spies, infiltrators, assassins, what have you, right? Like, they've got some skullduggery, they've got some fitness, they've got some ninjutsu techniques, and some special equipment on them. They can do that job they can be perfectly suitable as a straight Bushi, or they can combine that with some of their special dirty tricks to do that stuff I talked about, playing around with initiative, duels, exploiting disadvantages, that kind of stuff. It's a very robust school that you can do a lot of things with, and I think even as a later edition, it adds to a kind of counterpoint to the other classical Iaijutsu schools, which you've already talked about, right? Like, Niten lets you do kind of this warrior poet, philosopher kind of thing. Like, you can get a lot of extra scholar skills and stuff out of there. But you also have a lot of opportunities to, like, exploit terrain and kind of pick and choose your battles and do that sort of pragmatic path without being outright cheating. Whereas Kakita is very straight, very formal, got a very strong artistic bent, but can really double down on that. And Deathdealer is all about shortcuts, basically. It's all about, it doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter about necessarily picking the terrain, but they've got a real underhanded style to their dueling, while also being a perfectly serviceable ranged school, which is pretty interesting. And for people who are critiquing them, I think it's also fair to say that, like, each school has its limitations, right? You can only do Way of the Crane once per round, and also that requires you to crit in the first place. Like, you have to actually land the blow in such a way that you can crit. It flows pretty well. I talked about how I've heard actually some people say that despite the fact that very early a lot of people were like, oh shit, Way of the Dragon, and that kind of stuff, with Niten's it's very quote-unquote broken, it's very good. Now I've also heard other people come back with the critique that, like, it's all not on you. You don't get to choose when you can activate it. You just choose to activate it when somebody is coming at you, right? Like Way of the Crane, Way of the Scorpion is definitely a thing that, assuming you're doing your legwork, which we've already talked about how that can be a complication, but assuming you are doing your legwork, that's something you activate. It's when you make an initiative check or when you make an attack action, you're like, I got it, I'm going to Way of Scorpion this, kind of thing, right? And I just thematically really love the mastery ability. I think they're a very thematic school, and they're a very good addition to Scorpion. So, let's talk about the thing you're looking at in the actual slide. So, as predicted by this outlet, by me and many other people on the internet who are not D20 Radio. No offense to those guys, but I think that that French guy, there was somebody on the French Asmodee forums who was like, those guys came to the wrong conclusion based on the information. They jumped the gun, I think, a little on reporting that, oh no, it's ending, it's over. It's not over. As a lot of people predicted, myself included, Asmodee is reshuffling their RPG stuff. They react after a big interview. The general consensus is that they're reacting to market forces and kind of, they do have some, private equity stuff there that's going on even above Asmodee. But also I think it's just a general way to, like, approach how they're handling streamlining and stuff. So Fantasy Flight is primarily card and board and minis games. So they have undergone internal reorganization and reduction. They have cut out parts that are not focused on those aspects, like their RPG team, and are like, no, you're going to be primarily focused on those types of games, and your properties that have other applications we're going to port. So, Asmodee acquired several RPG studios, mostly in Europe, one of which was Edge Entertainment, and now, some people have gotten this wrong. They're still saying it's Edge Entertainment, which I expect this this presentation this was at Gamma, by the way, which is a trade show, with the showing off Edge Ent's website originally, but you'll notice on the header, it's not Edge Entertainment, it's Edge Studio. So they are rebranding Edge, which normally, I think they are the originators of Anima Beyond Fantasy, but mostly they translated books, including Final Fantasy books, into European languages and sold them there. But they are transforming Edge Entertainment into Edge Studio, who will be taking over RPG production. They are now Asmodee's RPG studio, their imprint, just like Asmodee opened Aconite to print future works, including they've got Mary Brennan to do, what is it, Night Parade of 1,000 Demons or something, I think is the full title. They're doing a full-size novel, which is it's a Scorpion episode, so I got distracted. It's Phoenix and Dragon focused, and she just wrote the Dragon novella. That's not until like January 2021, so I'm a little sad it's that far out, but still, I'm like, damn, I'm there. I'm 100% there. That sounds great. So I've heard reports that, for instance, FFG is going to stop doing novella production. That makes perfect sense. Asmodee has Aconite. They're switching to fuller-sized novels, even with some of the same writers, right? Like, they're bringing Mary Brennan back for that. So that's probably what they're doing from now on. Novel fiction stuff is going to Aconite. RPG stuff is going to Edge Studio. If, for instance, there was another card or board or minis game that was going to come out, those would probably be, even if they were tied to another company, those would probably be cycled back to Fantasy Flight. So Edge Studio is going to take up Genesis, Star Wars, and L5R. Now, good news, bad news, depending on your opinions of the RPG, there have been a lot of little shitlords on the internet who are like, oh, a new company, maybe they will do better. So if you do not like the direction L5R is going, well, you might as well just quit now and hopefully get out of my headspace where I have to see you. Because I believe this was in the Covenant interview at all. They interviewed Steve Horvath, who's with Asmodee right now. But yeah, they're going to hire back all the same freelancers and all the same guys who used to be full-time RPGers as freelancers. It's all going to be the same writers. I expect because they are a new studio, maybe they will check out new freelancers. Like for Genesis, for instance, Genesis has the Genesis Foundry system where you can do official. It's like open gaming license stuff. You can do quote unquote official Genesis homebrew stuff and sell it under license. So I expect that if they're smart, Edge Studio may hunt for new freelancers from popular supplements on Foundry. They may decide to do L5R Foundry stuff, but also I don't know. Katrina Ostrander is still employed as like FFG's head of story and setting. I expect that because Legend of the Five Rings is still an IP that is technically owned by Fantasy Flight. Now, obviously, Asmodee owns Fantasy Flight, but Edge and FFG, I think, are parallel. They're not, like, hierarchically organized, so they probably still have to run setting stuff, so I don't know if they're going to allow fan-made stuff. Whatever, if that's your big, I want to get paid to do a homebrew, fucking pitch your work or suck it up, I guess. I say this as an inveterate homebrewer. Sorry, this whole shenanigans over the studio closing has brought to my attention that there's a couple people in the community whose attitudes I really don't like, and I'm not going to be shy about it. But anyway, that's not a new thing. Omega is opinionated news at 11. Now, the interesting thing is they still say the Star Wars, so, like, I gotta be honest, me and a lot of people thought Star Wars was quote-unquote dead, like, it's donezo, after Starships and Speeders, which did come out recently. But supposedly there's more stuff coming, so I don't know. Will we finally get a full-blown Force Awakens game? Will we, now that they've announced the quote-unquote High Republic, will we get High Republic/Old Republic books? We will have to see where that goes. I expect you're not going to hear any news out of them for a while, because they didn't announce anything new before Starships and Speeders hit shelves, and I expect they won't until this transition, maybe an adventure or two, but I don't think anything big is going to come out after their Clone Wars stuff, unless they decide they need a third Clone Wars book. Who knows? Right. But Genesis will continue. We'll presumably still be doing Asmodee in-house IPs, and of course L5R will continue. I think FFG is shutting down long-term. I think we still got another couple of books that are mainly FFG produced in the pipeline. Some people are concerned because they're not English first, but at the same time, they are still translators, so presumably they have a decent enough grasp. I haven't heard any news about Edge Entertainment or their translations in specific. I do know, like for instance, sometimes translations or non-original fans of a series can be better. Like I've always heard people swear up and down that the German version of Shadowrun has always been better because the German publishers and fans make sure to actually include errata and stuff in them, and actually like they have a little bit more care sometimes, and the English releases might be a little slapdash or a little fast to print, so they have some bugs in them that when they get translated into German, the German publishers and stuff always make sure to smooth those out. I'll admit that's the kind of stuff I want. Is I wish that the game was a little smoother in the editing department. I have no complaints about writing, and generally minimal complaints about quote-unquote game balance. Just because there's so much narrative aspect of this game, it's kind of like Genesis in that respect, even though the core mechanics are quite different. It's just, as always, FFG has always been awful with table and copy editing, and continued to be awful, and I don't know whose fault that was, but maybe they've been fired, and maybe they won't be hired back. Maybe Edge has better formatters and editors in-house as the RPG branch. I don't know, but speaking of Starships and Speeders, I think that was the third or fourth time the Fang Fighter stat line got printed, and it was like the third or fourth different version of that stat line. You know, it's just a little bit of editing consistency is mostly what I want, and maybe some clarity. Hopefully this does mean that errata and other stuff will continue. They have their own temporary site, which is very temporary. They'll kind of buff up once they actually take over production, because we're still on a little tail end. Genesis has to release its Keyforge book. There's now Celestial Realms, and possibly a Lion book coming out that's rumored based on playtesters and stuff, that the Lion book was in the works. And thus still is in the works because it's still was organized by Fantasy Flight. We'll see if they get their own forums set up that are in English, that I can go there and hope that certain people don't get there, whatever. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. And I called it, and the world did not end. All right, I think that's everything for this episode of Enter the Dojo. Thanks so much for putting up with me for... Wait, hold on, I gotta do some math. That's about an hour long, and we recorded about 15 minutes of this. It's about an hour 15. Thank you so much for being here. I know we talked about some stuff that was not Bayushi Deathdealer, but hopefully we talked enough about Bayushi Deathdealer for you to get a good grasp on the school and kind of figure out what kind of options are good and the different ways you can take that character. And what's fun about them. Did it intrigue you? Do you want to play Bayushi Deathdealer right now? Let me know in the comments below. Next school has to be Unicorn, so it's going to be Shinjo Outrider because I like them. So I won't ask for your opinions. I did not mention this earlier, though, but I'm still kind of nettled about people's opinions about the Deer Clan. Please let me know in the comments if you want me to shoot a rambly, not even a video essay, but just me rambling into a microphone about why the Deer Clan aren't awful, and people who think they're awful usually need to get their nostalgia boner, from betwixt their ears. It would literally be called In Defense of the Deer Clan. Let me know if you want me to do that, because I'm at all times this close from just firing off into that one. And I don't know. I've kind of semi-scripted Welcome to Rokugan, but at the same time, I'm also there's a lot of really good tools. I keep getting reminded. Like, I looked at the Fictionalist the other day, and I'm like, oh shit, there's a full intro to all the different clans and stuff in here, and they're real short too. So I don't know. I'm constantly waffling on whether or not I feel the need to personally make an intro video for that. I don't think that's not a complex mechanical process. I can literally hand you a tiny pamphlet and be like, yo, here's Rokugan in 5 pages. Or possibly 7 pages. But yeah, keep that out. Hopefully, I know we've got a lot of weird stuff going on, and then, we've got to adjust to remote workflow, but hopefully, because drive-through and PDFs are digital distribution, that won't get any further delayed, and hopefully we can get that goddamn book soon, so I can review it for you in full, and I'm sure I've heard a lot of good things about it, other than, like I said, a couple of the mechanical editing issues. Maybe you could have used a couple extra passes in there. But I'll be sure to get that to you when we get that. So stay tuned for future Enter the Dojo and other L5R content. If you're interested in actual plays and stuff, currently we're doing a Clone Wars campaign, which is also by Fantasy Flight. Check out those APs. We're up to 8 episodes published, I think? Yeah. And nine's in the backlog for me to finish up editing and stuff. So check that out. A lot of people in the community are super jazzed for potential L5R campaigns for me, so I think I got, from some of the patrons and other game community, I think I got a decent pool of people. We've got people arguing about whether or not they're actually in the game or not, even though that game is months and months away. But I do have a partially written campaign that's mostly in a holding pattern. One, because it was oh, do I have the inspiration and stuff to finish? And now it's well, shit, Celestial Realms is going to have shit I'm going to want out of it. So we'll wait there for that to kind of work out. All right? Okay. So, if you like this video and are watching on YouTube, be sure to give it a like. If you have any comments, leave in the comment section down below. If you're new here and haven't already, please subscribe to our channel so you can always get our latest videos, like Enter the Dojo. I swear it'll be at least once a month, hopefully twice. And more L5R content, more Fantasy Flight stuff, all kinds of things, RPG stuff. Stay tuned. If you want to hear me ramble about game design and stuff, be sure to check out What's Up. It's pretty easy to get me to ramble about games and gaming in there. And of course, even if you're already subscribed, considering the bell for notifications, you always know when we post a new video, when we stream, when anything like that happens on the channel. Very important. And of course, like it says at the front of the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. For longer form videos like Enter the Dojo, I usually post just the audio, even though that doesn't have the visual aids, as audio for patrons for as little as $1 a month. And you can also get access to videos early and other audio downloads like our APs and stuff, podcasts, etc. And for more, you can get access to videos early. You can help vote on topics and stuff. You can really get in there. And honestly, just in general, it also feels like the just access to our Discord's patron channel seems to be a really good benefit for a lot of people. You get a lot of good responses from us and from other members of the community in there. So it's real neat. Check it out. All right. I'll see you in the next video. The next Enter the Dojo, like I said, probably going to be Shinjo Outrider. Let me know about other stuff. And stay tuned for that Path of Waves review. All right. I will be seeing you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye, everybody. Remember to stay honorable. Or don't. Wink.